Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yugioh Everything, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh video. And in today's video, we are going to be talking about something that is sure to generate a lot of debate down below. We are going to go show by show, protagonist by protagonist, and rank the 7 best protagonists in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, I say 7 even though I know a lot of you are thinking there's only been 6 shows, because I am ranking Yugimoto and Yami Yugi as 2 separate characters. That is obviously the cornerstone of the franchise, these two, and so to rank them individually, I think is important and kind of relevant for this list. So we will be ranking Yami Yugi and Yugi, Judai from GX, Yusei from 5Ds, Yuma from Zexal, Yuya from Arc 5, and Yusaku from Yu-Gi-Oh! VRAINS. It's important to remember that this is just my opinion. It really does not mean anything, but I hope you guys enjoy, and let's all try to keep it civil down below. I genuinely do like all of these characters, but obviously I have to rank some of them higher than others. So without further ado, let's just get into it. Please leave your best protagonists and your favorite protagonists down below in the comments. Let's begin. Alright, let's do it. Kicking off this list in the bottom spot is Yuya Sakaki, the main protagonist of Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. Yuya was a character that I really liked in the first half of Arc 5, but one of the reasons Yuya declined in my eyes as the show went on was because of how forced his entertainment dueling felt, and how dependent he became on action cards. These two things really made me grow weary of Yuya as the show went on. Listen, action cards were such an annoyance to me in Arc 5, as I know a lot of people did not like them. If a character picked up an action card, it was 90% of the time Miracle or Evade, and I think the lack of different action cards or the early promise of action traps being a thing and then never showing up again was the main problem with them. The fact that the writers made Yuya so dependent on them, and the fact that he would always get exactly what he needed, just made his dueling feel stale. Yugioh and Dennis were 2 characters who were great entertainers, and their dueling was not dependent on drawing Evade or Miracle 5 times every duel. More so than that, his ideologies of making people smile started to feel kind of forced as the show went on. I know he had good intentions, and that is one of the things I like a lot about Yuya, but there is a time and place for everything in a realistic manner. That duel against Jack, sure, it needed to be entertaining to bring the Synchro Dimension together. The duel against the Tyler twins, after they brutalized Alan, Sayaka, Gong, and Shingo, the Battle Beast duel, no. The entertainment was not necessary. You are in an interdimensional war, and you're still trying to make people happy. The same people who have killed so many innocent citizens, it just didn't feel realistic to me, and it led to a lot of those duels, and especially the quick redemption scenes for characters, feeling so forced. I mean, down the stretch of the show, I honestly barely rooted for Yuya, because his dueling style just kind of got on my nerves, and the writers, for some reason, always pitted him against fan-favorite characters, and besides the duel against Yuri, Yuya never dueled a main villain. Dueling someone like Zark, which was obviously not possible, or someone like Jean-Michel Raget, or hell, even Leo Akaba in a one-on-one matchup would have been really interesting, because let's be honest, that duel with Leo Akaba, we were all focused on Reiji. Any of those matchups would have really let the fans get behind his character. Overall, I like Yuya, and I know I'm mostly just ranting on the negatives, but I'm just trying to justify why he is at the bottom of this list for me. But please, let me know where Yuya ranks for you down below. I know whichever protagonist I put in last will probably be the big talking points in the comments, so yeah. Anyway, let's tread on. Coming in 6th is Little Yugimoto. Little Yugi was never going to rank too highly for me because, well, he was always overshadowed in my opinion. Even though he is the cornerstone guy of the franchise, he rarely felt like the main protagonist of Duel Monsters. That being said, he was a much needed counterweight for the very rough around the edges Yami Yugi. I really did like Yugi a lot. He had a heart of gold and only wanted to make friends, which was the wish he made when he put together the puzzle. Seeing him guide the Pharaoh to the afterlife while teaching him about compassion and friendships and bonds was really fun to watch. My favorite Yugi moment had to be either when he pushed Atem out of the way of the Seal of Orichalco, sacrificing himself instead to the seal, or when he tagged in and out with Yami in the Pegasus duel. That was something I always respected about Little Yugi, even when face to face with these horrific villains, Yami Bakura, Pegasus, Yami Marek. he was fearless. He was such a brave character, and watching him tread on and believe in his other half was really inspiring. Yugi finally has his own dueling moment in the spotlight when he steps up to defeat Yami Bakura, and then eventually Yami Yugi, but right as he had all that momentum, the series came to an end. So even though I have nothing but good to say about Yugi as a character, I feel like I can't put him much higher, because at times he felt like a side character, especially in the more drawn-out dueling sequences, and for the entirety of Season 4. Yugi Muto comes in 6th on this list. My choice for 5th might actually surprise a lot of people, but coming in 5th is Yusaku Fujiki, the leading man of Yu-Gi-Oh! VRAINS. Let me start off by saying this. I liked Yusaku, as I liked all of the protagonists to some degree. So again, me putting him or anyone this low on my list does not mean I dislike them by any means. I thought he was a much-needed breath of fresh air, and was the first older protagonist the franchise had since 5Ds. With that said, I felt there was a lot that was left to be desired when it came to Yusaku. He was probably a really good backstory away from being in my top 3, honestly, and maybe a loss away as well. He went through most of the show not showing any vulnerability, and I feel that losing a duel would have been a perfect time to show a side of him that we didn't really get to see too often. I know Yusei often gets the Mary Sue tag, but I'll explain a little later on why it's not even close when comparing Yusei and Yusaku in that regard. Really, the only similarity these two had were their age. I did enjoy the Lost Incident backstory of Yusaku a lot, and it was probably the darkest backstory any Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist has had, so it is important for me to acknowledge that a lot of the reason for him being closed off and blunt stems from the childhood trauma he endured. I think this is important to mention because it does give Yusaku a get-out-of-jail-free card. It makes so much sense as to why he had his closed-off personality and dueling soldier mentality. Even by the end of the show, he had his heart broken just as badly as when he was a kid, and his story is really a tragedy. While I enjoyed that aspect of his character, another massive issue for me when it comes to Yusaku was his backstory, which barely scratched the surface. We know nothing about where he came from. Did he have parents? Was he adopted? Not knowing any of this made it tricky to relate to him, especially since there were so many plot points that linked back to his childhood. Seeing his relationship with Eye Blossom was fun to watch, and Yusaku did become a friendlier, more approachable person as time went on. He was an enjoyable character, but the protagonists ahead of him just had an extra layer that he lacked, and so he takes 5th on this list. Coming in 4th place, smack dab in the middle, is the leading lad of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, and that is Yuma Tsukumo. It took me a long time before I really started to enjoy Yuma a lot as a character and as a protagonist. Yuma was an insanely different kind of protag from the 3 before him, and I think that stark change is what was responsible for me taking such a long time to get used to his style and to enjoy it. I will still say that he probably has the best character development of any character in the entire franchise. Yuma starts off as a kid who really has no dueling ability whatsoever. However, his Kato Bingo spirit, which basically means to never give up and always believe in yourself, always inspires him to do just that, get back up. He comes into contact with an alien named Astral, and this is when everything starts to change. Not only is he able to gain dueling ability thanks to Astral, but he also has to face a plethora of nasty enemies. By the end of the show, Yuma is no longer a dueling noob. He's reached the point of dueling with the gods. But once again, we see a young, innocent character go through basically hell, seeing characters and friends die all around him, all while somehow maintaining a positive attitude. He's so optimistic to the point that even in the final duel against Shark, he cancels his attack because he doesn't want Shark to die. The heart that this kid had was truly remarkable, and he really is a protagonist that just gets better and better as the series goes on. His character transformation sequences were always so great and memorable. Whether it was one of the forms of Zale or Dark Zale, Yuma matured and grew up so much during the show. He's a character that I know gets a lot of hate, but trust me, watch Zexal subbed if you haven't. The differences between the sub and the dub of this show are stark, especially when it comes to Yuma's characterization. I think the dub is where a lot of the hate from Yuma stems from, and while he is very hyper and young and immature in the early stages of the show, his growth is well worth watching. Yuma comes in 4th for me on this list. Coming in 3rd is Yami Yugi, the Pharaoh, Atem, whatever you want to call him. I always viewed Yami as the actual protagonist of Duel Monsters, seeing how the entire story was getting him to return to the afterlife. Yami was also the one who did 99% of the dueling during the show, often switching places with Yugi whenever a scene or a moment got a bit too intense. The transformation scene to this day is still iconic, and I think it could strike nostalgia into any single person born in the 90s. I felt Yami had really great growth throughout the series. In the very early days, he would often really punish his opponents in very harsh ways. We even see this in early stages of Duelist Kingdom, but as the show went on, in heavy part thanks to little Yugi, Yami became a more caring and understanding character. The Duelist Kingdom-esque punishments stopped, and he learned to invest more in his friendships and bonds, which helped him prevail in a lot of tough spots. His dueling ability is unrivaled, but unlike someone like Yusaku, he still managed to show vulnerability in his dueling, case in point, when he gave in to the evil powers of the Seal and ended up losing to Raphael. Season 4 was a really good arc for Yami, as it forced him to face the world without his other, often more emotionally stable half. While Yami understood the way people and hearts work very well, he also lost control of himself at times, which made for some incredible scenes, the Berserker Soul one being one of the more famous. Whenever he came out, we knew things were about to get badass and real, and he was the epitome of those words. I'm not putting him higher than this because I felt Yugi was also very important for Yami's growth, understandably so, and I feel neither of the Yugis got as much focus on their character arc as other protagonists because, well, they shared the same spotlight for the most part. But regardless, the Pharaoh was a really good protagonist and character to follow, and he is the third best protagonist in Yu-Gi-Oh! This might be an unpopular pick of the video, having this guy so high, but the runner-up protagonist is Judai Yuki, or Jaden Yuki, from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Now, I'm not as big of a fan of GX as a whole as I am of Judai. To me, and I think countless others, Judai is probably the most relatable out of all the Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists. He starts out as a young, innocent kid who loves dueling. When the 7 stars come and attack the academy, that's when he starts becoming personally insulted almost and disgusted that people would use dueling for evil purposes, a game that he thinks should only be used for fun. This is when his outlook really starts to change. I just feel like the journey Judai takes is a journey that anyone can relate to. You start out as an innocent kid, and as you get older, you realize the world is a cruel, cruel place, and growing up to face these harsh realities is not an easy thing to do. Judai falls into darkness when he sees his friends get killed in Season 3 and becomes the Supreme King. This, to me, embodies depression. The Supreme King is a symbolism for when the world is constantly just beating you up over and over until you just can't take it anymore. I think everyone has experienced disappointment and grief, and the way you handle that differs from person to person. There are a lot of people who get depressed and fall into despair, and that's exactly what happens to Jaden on his journey. And he's extremely lucky that he has friends like Axel and Jim Cook, who are able to help him defeat his demons and escape his depression, and ultimately escape the clutches of the Supreme King. By the time Season 4 comes around, everyone can tell Jaden is different, and he's become hardened by this journey that he's had to experience. It's not until the end of Season 4 where he regains his spirit and his joy for dueling. Honestly, his whole character arc is phenomenal. I know a lot of people who have seen only the English dub like to say Jaden was a goofy, idiotic, clueless character, but there is so much more to him in the original version of GX that it's baffling. I can relate so much to his story, and he literally just barely missed out on the top spot for me. I absolutely love Judai, one of my favorite characters in the whole franchise, and the runner-up on this list. Through process of elimination, I am sure you have figured out that the best Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist, in my opinion, is Yusei Fudo from Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. What to say about this GOAT? There are a few reasons why Yusei is at the top of my list. The first being, he is one of the only protagonists never to succumb to darkness. While it's usually really awesome to see, I always have a hard time rooting for a character when they become evil, like Yuma did with Dark Zexal, Yugi with Seal of Orichalcos, Yuya with Berserk Mode, and Judai with Supreme King. However, this was not an issue that Yusei had to deal with which for me speaks a lot about the kind of person that Yusei is, especially when you consider the world that he grew up in, and the fact he grew up in this world without either of his parents, who died when they were at such a young age. The amount of resiliency and optimism Yusei demonstrated every day by just going out and living his life in a way that was able to influence others in a positive way is such a testament to the warrior that he was. There are so many do-by example moments that Yusei has. One of my favorites has to be at the end of Season 5. He's seconds away from sacrificing himself to save everyone in Neo Domino City before Zone comes and saves him by sacrificing himself instead. Yusei didn't even hesitate when it came to protecting the city and his friends, so much so that he was willing to kill himself to ensure their survival. Even when all of his friends go on their own path at the end of the show, he decides that he is going to stay in the city that raised him, so they will always have a place to come home to. What a selfless guy, man. I know a lot of people like to point out that Yusei is a Mary Sue and therefore a bad protagonist because he never lost, but I always tend to disagree with that. While he had no technical losses during 5Ds, there were plenty of times he showed vulnerability. We know he lost to Jack in a flashback, and moreover, he realistically got smacked by Kiryu the first time they dueled. He 100% lost that duel, and the amount of time it took him to mentally recover after that was not like a Mary Sue character at all. He even showed emotional vulnerability on multiple occasions, especially during his meltdown against Roger, where he talked about all the guilt he felt for his father's actions. Especially after seeing Yusaku and VRAINS, I think the argument that Yusei was a perfect Mary Sue character is a bit outdated. Another thing I liked about Yusei, he was always able to make characters see the light and save them from evil. Between Rex Godwin, Zone, Aporia, Kiryu, there was almost never an antagonist that Yusei didn't see good within and attempted to convince them that what they were doing was wrong. And half the time, Yusei would actually be able to get through their blackened heart. That just speaks volumes to who Yusei was as a person, and to put it bluntly, he's just the man. Yusei is one of my personal favorite characters in Yu-Gi-Oh!, and in my opinion, he is the best protagonist that we have ever had. And that about wraps it up. This is certainly going to be a very long video. I really hope you guys enjoyed. That was the top protagonists, the best protagonists, the top 7 of Yu-Gi-Oh! And again, I really hope you enjoyed, and let me know all your thoughts down below. I know there's going to be a lot of debate. I know there's going to be people that disagree with who I ranked last, that disagreed with who I ranked first, that disagreed with pretty much everything I just said, so I'm really excited to talk to you all down below. But please, I know this is a very polarizing topic. Let's try to keep it civil. I know we are all more than capable of that. A special thank you to my Platinum tier patrons Alexa Baker, Glen McGookin, Jorge Carrillo, Horace Maye, Goosey Q, Vincent Van Der Veen, Panther J, Smith620, Jorge Leon, Blue Maiden 28, Jarrett Buller, and Gabe G, and to my Diamond tier patrons Jesse Wood, Latrell Smith, Sean, and Melinda Phantom, and to my Egyptian God tier patron, Syn Cloud. This actually was an Egyptian God tier patron requested video by Syn Cloud, so Syn, thank you so much for this idea and for the request. I probably would not have made this video had no one requested it, so this is all thanks to him. And yeah, thank you guys all so much for watching. I will talk to you all down below, and I hope you have an amazing day.